Here we go. So today we are going to be I don't have the physical book with me, but it's called The Immutable Laws of Living. There you go. I am so glad that you have that book because I have it on PDF.
Yeah, there you go.
So thank you so much. Every time I say it, if you want to bring it up.
I'll just bring it on up.
Right. And then we're going to have Del Billis of Liberty Health share. So fasten your seatbelts because we're going to learn and grow together. Oh, yeah, by the way, Dr. Lee, this is something you want me to call you Dr. Lee or Dr. Baucom?
Either is fine. Lee is fine.
Okay. It's time to dance.
Okay.
Go ahead, Brian. Let's hear that music. Time to dance. There you go.
It seems like your best day.
There you go.
If you're in need of hope, you know where I'll be. I'll be right here, right here. And when you need a friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here.
You didn't know you had to dance this morning, did you?
I didn't. No, not this early.
How early is it over there?
It's 8 o'clock, so I don't have a lot of excuses.
Place you can always turn to when you need a friend.
Live a good life.
To reach out to Lillian, visit her on the web at whenyouneedafriend.com. Now let's all learn together. Here's Lillian McDermott.
Hello, my listening friend. It's so nice we can meet each other on the air on this beautiful best day ever. And for those of you who are new to the Lillian McDermott radio show, the purpose of the show is to provide a safe place that you can go to when you need a friend. It is my commitment to provide alternative ways to heal, and it is my mission to make awareness, responsibility, and truth a part of our everyday life. And I hope you, my viewing as well as my listening friends, will feel empowered to embrace a new truth and live the life of your dreams. Now, today we're giving a book away. So I know those of you who love getting books on the Lillian McDermott radio show are really excited about this. The book is called The Immutable Laws of Living. There we go. The Immutable Laws of Living. What is that? What is that all about? Immutable? What is this all title about? Do you feel stuck in your life? Do you feel that you were dealt a bad hand of cards? Would you like to make some changes? But there's the big old but. You are afraid to fail. Perhaps maybe you're afraid to succeed. Who knows? Dr. Lee Baucom, PhD, is the best-selling author and therapist, life coach, self-help speaker, and the author of the book, The Immutable Laws of Living, the Inspirational Blueprint to Living Your Meaningful Life. This guy is like meant for the Lillian McDermott radio show. So if you want a copy of this book for free, be the 7th, I'm going to make it easy for you guys, 7th caller or texter. Call, leave a message. I do not answer the phone. Call, leave a message, or text me at 407-373-5959, because today he's going to share how we can achieve the highest potential through obeying the natural laws of living. What? And since it is our sole purpose in life to give and receive love and knowledge, I am so grateful that Dr. Lee Baucom is here to do just that. Welcome, Dr. Baucom, to the Lillian McDermott radio show.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I am too. I am so glad that you're here too. So share a little bit about your background, what you would like for us to know about you before we start asking you so many questions.
Well, so my background is a fairly normal background. I had a very intact family. My father is a minister. My mother was a school counselor. So I kind of grew up in the whole psychology world and therapy world and faith world. And so that carried me through. And I left after college to pursue graduate studies. I became a pastoral counselor and just kept on going and realized along the way that I was a coach more than anything else. Mm-hmm. And so I headed off in that direction and was doing just fine until I got sick. And when I got sick, it was interesting because I was always drawn to kind of the self-help thing about resilience, that you can be your best self. And so there I was talking to people about that, but not doing that. And so I got sick, sick enough that the doctor said that I would be disabled and eventually would die. And so that kind of caught my attention. I was not very old at that point. I was in my 30s,
Wow.
late 30s. And to hear that I was kind of at the end of it was a bit of a shock. And so because of that, I decided I had to revamp my life. And part of that was realizing that I was tripping myself up. So when I talk about these laws, I talk about them because I've tripped myself up on every one of them. So after that, I'm what I call now bonus time. This is my opportunity to kind of figure out how to talk to the world about better ways of being in a time period I didn't think I was going to have. And so that really is a linchpin to what I've been doing in these last years, trying to help people see the places that we all tend to trip ourselves up without even recognizing that we're getting in our own way.
You know, interesting that you would say that a doctor would tell you that you would end up being disabled and die. And prior to doing the show today, you were telling me that you dive, that you paddleboard, and that you do so many different things that a disabled individual that is about to die in their 30s. And how long ago was that?
Yeah, that was 12 years ago.
12 years ago, you certainly look like you are not even close to that. So did you fire your doctor?
Well, he was right, except for I had a worse version of what they thought I had, and so it burned itself out. So his diagnosis was exactly right. I just had to change everything after my life because I wasn't doing those things before the diagnosis. I wasn't diving, I wasn't paddleboarding, I wasn't exercising, and I was eating poorly.
But people watch the diagnosis and they use that diagnosis as an excuse to not obey the laws, right?
Yeah. That was not ever. I've always been a stubborn person. I think my mother would tell you that that's one of my big pieces. So I have to be careful to follow up and really pay attention.
Isn't it true? Here we are trying to help everybody and we're lacking sleep, we're not eating well, we're not doing these things. And, do as I say, not as I do, does not work on the Lillian McDermott radio show. Be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959. Win a copy of The Immutable Laws of Living. When we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com, this is 407-373-5959. We'll be right here waiting for you. Isn't that amazing, my dear, that you would be given a diagnosis? Do you want to share what your diagnosis was?
My concern with sharing my diagnosis is there are people who have this that are not going to end up where I am.
But that gives them hope.
Yes. So sarcoidosis is what I had, and it's an autoimmune illness, pretty rare. And it's Bernie Mac died from that several years back. I had the acute version. And I always want to be clear because I know a couple of people who have the chronic version, and it really does. It eats your body up. The acute version made me much more sick than a chronic person would describe. Usually you find out that you have that because they've eliminated all these other options. And for the acute version, my doctor said, "I'm sorry, you're bad. That's good. You're so sick that you're going to get better, but I can't treat you." And that was 3 doctors in. I'd seen a number of specialists, and so that's what happened.
But one of the things, I don't know if you checked out my show and what I'm about, but my registered service mark is you can take a pill or you can take responsibility. It's not that I'm against the pill, but you took responsibility. Now, I understand that everybody has their own path and their own destiny, but here is one of the things that I do know, that healing is a mind, body, spirit. If you just focus on the disease, the diagnosis, you don't get to the what caused this. The people that I've had, and I don't know how you feel about this. And Brian, keep me honest with the time. I don't know how you feel about this, but there's been research, documented evidence that every disease has an emotional component. Were you able to go back and dissect what brought you to getting to this condition?
Yeah, fear. I mean, I can even tell you how I got it and what happened in the process. And it was all based in living a stressed out, fearful life, trying to take on a project that I was not quite ready to take on.
Yeah. And when your brain and your body are not in alignment. So here's my quote. The the body will not forget what the brain wants to neglect. And so you faced it. And as a result, this beautiful book has come out. Here we go, part 2. I'm glad you shared that.
McDermott, or leave her a voicemail at 407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Okay, once again, The Immutable Laws of Living. This book is the inspirational blueprint. The inspirational blueprint for living the life that you want. Go ahead, let's show that book on you.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It is. I'm telling you, when you decided to write this book, it was like, okay, what? Immutable? Okay, let's talk about immutable first of all, because I looked up immutable and I wanted to see how you were using the word immutable, and you address it in the book as well. So let's talk about what is unchanging about the law and what is the law. So those are the two things that we want to talk about. And for those of you want a copy of this book, it's 407-373-5959. If you call, I will not answer the phone, so please leave a message or leave a text. You don't want to write The Immutable Laws of Living, but just know, say, I want this book. So let's start with that. What are these laws? And why are they unchangeable?
Yeah, so I've got a number of the laws in there, and the reason they're unchangeable is because they cut across everybody. I know that because I kept watching. First for myself, I kept realizing that I was tripping up on these pieces. And then I was realizing for my clients that they were also on these same issues, the same places I was getting stuck. Everybody was getting stuck. The more I looked, the more I realized that my friends, family, if they were stuck on some of these laws, and not one law. Usually when we're breaking a law, we're breaking multiple laws at the same time.
Okay.
And conversely, if you start following a few of the laws, you end up getting all of them in a line at some point, just because you start getting in alignment with where life wants to move you. Mm-hmm. You mentioned the paddleboarding. I paddleboard on a river, and so you have to kind of manage the current.
Yes.
And so it was a summer day, May, several years back. I just finished mowing the lawn, and I was hot, sweaty, and I said, I think I'm going to go on down to the river and paddle. My wife said, oh, that's fine. And so I kicked out, and I headed upriver. And the place that I kicked into the river was right where a restaurant was set up on the hill. And all these people sat on the hill looking at the river after they ate. And so I realized as I was paddling out that I had miscalculated two things: the number of people that would be watching me and the swiftness of the current. And so if I paddled downstream, I'd still have to come back at some point. And I turned into the current and I started paddling, and I was completely aware. This is my first time on a paddleboard that spring. And so, feeling a little unstable, and everybody's watching me, and what they're watching for was for me to take a swim. Right. And so I didn't want to show them that. I wanted to prove that I could do it. I'm paddling. And I'm proud of myself because I can see the water rushing by me, and I'm just going along paddling. And so after about 25 minutes, I looked over to see how far up I'd gone, and I'd lost 10 feet in the process. And as I was sitting there, I was going, oh, everybody's been watching me on this treadmill of a river, for 25 minutes. And so I just calmly kicked myself, as if I had meant to do that, back into the creek and went on by. And I was sitting there going, I'd make a lot better progress if I wasn't fighting the current, fighting the way things were flowing, if I'd gone with the current.
Yeah.
And that was one of those places where I went, sometimes we're fighting life. We're going up against the current where we could just cut into it and go backwards. And so that's what I mean by these immutable laws. The life keeps flowing by us. And the question is whether we're getting in alignment with it, or if we are pushing against it, fighting the current. So that's where it comes from.
It's a couple of things that have come up with what you're saying. You're talking about how your patients, your clients had like reoccurring, that they were stuck exactly where you were stuck, and they were stuck and you were stuck. And here you are helping them, which is a big myth. People think that because you're helping someone, you've got all your stuff figured out. That's not necessarily true.
Not ever true.
There we go. Okay. So, but then here's the thing. Your patients became your teachers. Here you are trying to help them, but they were teaching you that there was a law, that they were teaching you that there was a pattern here. And it was wonderful that you were able to awaken to, gosh, this is just something that we're all in this together. We're not individuals having different experiences. We're all one person having the same experience. Okay. And then the second thing I wanted to, here you are paddling against the current, which, by the way, you always want to start when you're the strongest against the current.
Exactly.
Right? So I know exactly what you're doing as a diver. I know exactly what you're doing because I've had to fight the current too. And so I know why you start. Yeah. But here's the thing. The story in your head, you imagined all those people were watching you making up stories about you. Exactly. That's not real.
Exactly.
It's not real. They were all stories in your head. And you not only were trying to fight the current, but you were fighting the voices in your head.
Yep.
So let's talk about these laws and why these laws are so important. We should be aware of these laws. So let's get started with the first law.
Yeah. Okay. So in fact, let me just jump to one of the end ones because you mentioned that listening to clients. One of the things that is one of my laws is that you're always learning. That is part of life. Yep. And so that is one of my big things that I'm always listening to where I can learn, where I need to learn, where I need to function in. And so for me, we're built for growth. Ray Kroc says that you're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. Those are the two options.
Yeah, that's not true.
Yeah, so that's where part of this started is for me realizing and looking around and realizing that I had to kind of approach life differently. I had to learn everything new after my illness to figure out how to actually treat myself well, how to exercise, how to eat well, how to get rest, how to deal with stress, how to deal with fear. Which was one of those pieces. So
yeah, and I want to add, for those of you who listen to us on the radio or on podcast, I want to encourage you to watch the YouTube video. Go to whenyouneedafriend.com. Watch the YouTube video with Dr. Baucom because I asked about his diagnosis and I asked what was the root cause. And fear is always there, know, and even just saying the word of the diagnosis, you were able to heal your body because you gave your body what it needed, right? Some of us refuse to give ourselves what we need, but we're so busy giving everybody else what they need. Yeah. And you were able to follow the laws. So let's start. Okay, so always learning is a philosophy of mine. I always say that if you think you're done growing, then put a chalk line around you because you are dead.
Yeah.
So that follows along with my philosophy as well. So let's keep going.
Yeah. So in fact, I'm bouncing around in the
That's
laws.
Fine.
The cool thing about the laws is they are all intertwined. I wrote them in an order, but I also suggest that people jump in and pull a piece out and look at what makes sense. And so fear for me is one of those pieces that we have to look at. We all have fears. And part of what I've noticed is that no one likes to feel fear. And that's because we've oriented to fear in a certain way. We've gotten to the place, I think from childhood, where the scary things at night, whatever bumps in the night, is where we want to avoid that feeling. It gives us a bad feeling. The interesting thing is we chase that same feeling. When
we attract it.
Yeah. So we try to also, if you go to a scary movie, we're trying to feel the excitement, ride a scary ride. It's feeling the excitement.
Not
and
me. Not me. I'm good with you feeling it. I don't need to feel that.
We usually have something that makes us excited.
Yes.
And our body's response to excitement is the exact same thing as fear, except for we're calculating it differently. And so fear is one of those unavoidables. I don't really think that the task is to get rid of fear as much as understand how to orient towards fear and how to use fear in your life. If we try to avoid fear, it's going to find its way in other ways. And it's interesting to me how often we rename fear, like stress. I'm feeling stressed is really somebody saying, I'm feeling fear. I just don't want to call it that.
Or hate.
Or hate is another place. Hate is a nice mixture of connection with something and fear of it. So it's easier to push away with the hate than to deal with it. So fear is one of those things I think is unavoidable and no reason to avoid it because it's pointing out how something is important to you. I think that what we've ended up doing is making fear the avoidance indicator. We avoid that. I really think of it as the importance indicator that we just need to now pay attention and see what that is. Because I think that as soon as we start moving towards it, the fear begins to get in its right place. I always think of fear as this, person beside me, this voice beside me. I would say friend, but not always friend. It's trying to whisper, hey, don't watch, be careful there. And sometimes that voice is just saying, pay attention to this. But if we give it too much voice, if we listen too loudly, it begins to overwhelm us and push us down. So we're living a smaller and smaller life. What we think is nobody else is feeling the fear. My experience is everybody else is feeling the fear. And the question is whether we are stepping forward in spite of the fear or getting trapped in it.
Mm. Well, I developed a new acronym for fear. And that's how I deal with fear. And when you're talking about fear and how it's something that is unavoidable, how do you suggest that we use the fear? Because there is something called intuition that we ignore. Mm-hmm. We ignore our intuition, the intuition that says, get out now. When you're looking at a deer drinking water in the woods, they feel that fear, they feel that intuition, and they stop and they run. And then later in the scene, when you're watching this documentary or whatever, you'll see a lion. And They knew to walk away. We, as people, we don't want to look bad or offend anybody, so we go towards the violator, in some cases. How do you distinguish fear of intuition, or fear versus intuition, or that this is something that is our comfort zone?
So they're both the same. I think that our brain is looking for threats all the time. And there are threats that are kind of threats to our ego. And then there are threats that are threats to our physical life.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
And so they're both being triggered. The humans are very interesting because we're both predator and prey. In the natural, if you put us into the wild, we're both predator and prey. And so we have both of that. Deer, that's only prey, right? And so they're always on alert, and they would be better off always running around and seeing. If you're a predator, you're just looking for the weak, right? The easiest meal. And so we have that same place in there that we have the mix, and we've got to figure out how to use both pieces. When is our brain saying, hey, that's important because it's risky? And when is it, hey, that's important because it's important to your future? Yeah.
Getting out of your comfort zone, because being in your comfort zone can kill you. There are people who are comfortable. Yeah. That's right. Some people are getting beaten every night, and that's their comfort zone.
Right.
Some people drink themselves to sleep every night. That's their comfort zone.
Comfort always keeps us locked down.
Okay.
That's what we're trying to find, but that's a dangerous spot to be stuck in.
That is. And so this is something that we might want to dive deeper while we're on the break, but how do you unstick yourself from getting out of how do you get out of your comfort zone?
Courage.
Yeah.
I love that word because it's from the heart.
Mm-hmm.
Coeur is French for heart. And so I think courage is not acting without fear.
Yeah.
It's acting in spite of the fear. You keep pushing because of that.
Yeah. I love the movie We Bought a Zoo. I always say this, and I go into this. I don't remember if it's We Bought a Zoo, who the actors were, but there was one line in that movie that made it worth it. And it was, all you need is 20 seconds of courage to do anything. I've got 20 seconds of courage, don't you, Dr. Lee?
Yeah, we can always step into that spot.
Yes, absolutely. Dr. Baucom, Dr. Lee Baucom's book is The Immutable Laws of Living. And seventh caller or texter, 407-373-5959. Seventh caller or texter. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dr. Baucom when we return worldwide at whenyouneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. I am so glad Brian pads me a few seconds. I count on those seconds. But the inspirational blueprint to living your meaningful life. So here we go, Dr. Baucom. Our meaningful life. What is our meaningful life? And what does that look like? And so when we come back for the break, or maybe right now we can talk about it, what is that, what would you say, the reason why people should pick up this book and read it?
Yeah, discovering that meaning of what it is for you is the big piece. And that is a big chunk. I mean, I really believe that we are built for meaning, for purpose, and for impact. And so we probably want to unwrap that.
Yes, we will.
Yeah,
We will.
because meaning is my meaning, and my meaning is different than yours.
Perfect. Hold on a second.
I'll be right here waiting for you.
Brian, let me know when
You
it's
can text Lillian McDermott or
10
leave
minutes
her a
till the
voicemail.
show.
407-373-5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
And welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today, we're really fortunate. We have Dr. Lee Baucom, who wrote the book, The Immutable Laws of Living, the Inspirational Blueprint to Living Your Meaningful Life. And for those of you who'd like a copy of this book, be the 7th caller or texter, 407-373-5959. That's 407-373-5959. If you call, please leave a message. And if you text, just let me know that you're listening to the show today and that you want the book. Just say ILL because Immutable Laws of Living is a mouthful. But while we're on the break, we have Dale Billis of Liberty Health Share joining us later on, but we're able to talk about this book. Why? Because there's so many laws to living, and they're, specify how many laws, Dale, Lee, Dr. Baucom, did you write in the book?
Yeah, so we narrowed it down to 16.
Yeah, 16.
Yeah.
Very simple
That's
enough.
right.
Very simple laws.
The nice thing is that you can pull a few of those, and that
Yes.
they all start compounding each other when you start working on them.
But don't you find that there are times where the law does speak to you at different times? Not all 16 are hitting you on the face, but you can draw upon these laws to say, oh, now this is the path I need to take. And so I can follow my yellow brick road,
Right.
whatever that is for me. So why should people buy this book then? Because, one could say, oh, these things are very, intuitive, but we ignore our intuition.
Right.
So why would you say, why pick up this book? Why buy this book?
Yeah, so let's start with one of the laws, and I'll tell you what happens. One of them is that life is not fair. That's a law. Mm-hmm. And we say that all the time. We usually say it to somebody else. Somebody's complaining. We say, well, life's not fair. Mm-hmm. And so we know that, but we don't act like we know it in our own lives. We keep waiting for life to be fair. And so one of the things I've noticed is that when I talk about these laws, a lot of times people they'll either say, oh, yeah, that kind of makes sense, or I've thought of that before. Mm-hmm. And I always say, thinking about it and acting on it are two very different things. Are you following it? Because if I'm driving down the road and that speed limit is posted there, I know the speed limit. Does that mean I follow it? Yeah. My wife would tell you no. So they need to remind me a little bit further down. And so part of what we're trying to do is retrain our lives, retrain our minds to get us focused on what keeps us moving forward. So what I've noticed is a lot of times people will read something and say, I kind of knew that. I just don't follow it. And so it's the same thing when I'm talking with couples in marriage counseling. I'll tell them something. I'll go, yeah, I know that. And my response is knowing it and doing it are two very different things. And we're trying to get action here, not the same thing. If you're doing the same thing, you stay stuck. We're trying to get moving forward. And so part of what we're aiming for in following these laws is creating a life that is about finding a deeper sense of meaning, a place of purpose, that where you feel like you have a place you're moving into the world, and how you're making a difference in the world, how you make an impact in the world.
Sure. One of the things that kind of reached out to me, and I was looking at your book, was your life is your responsibility. As I mentioned to you before, you can take a pill, you can take responsibility as my registered service mark. So let's talk about your terminology of responsibility and what you talk about in the book.
Yeah, responsibility. I love the word. There are a lot of words that I really love. Courage was one we talked about earlier, but responsibility is the ability to respond. Mm-hmm. And that's as opposed to reacting or no action. We have a choice. And so Jack Canfield, people usually know Jack Canfield, talked about this formula, E plus R equals O. Mm-hmm. So there's the event, and then there's our response, and that equals the outcome. And a lot of times we get lost in the fact of either the E or the R. We think the event is it. There's nothing we can do because this happened. Sometimes we believe that we have all of the power and all the control. And the fact is that it's the combination of those two. And so it's how we're responding to those pieces that make the difference to where we're getting to.
Very good. Okay, another thing that you were talking about are thoughts. Let's talk about thoughts, because earlier you gave an example of paddling and thinking.
Yeah.
Everybody was thinking that you were just a schmuck or type of,
Right.
like, here he is.
Watch him fall. Yeah.
Look, watch him fall, watch him fall.
Yeah.
But all those voices were in your head. Maybe they were looking at you going, wow, look at that guy.
Yeah.
He's using the river as a treadmill.
Right.
He's a superhero. But here we are thinking, he's going to flop. I'm looking forward to failure. So let's talk about those thoughts in our head and how important it is to reframe our thoughts so that we can flow with the river.
And actually, probably those people on the shore were going, oh, what a beautiful day. Look at that. I was not a part of it.
They didn't even notice you.
We all tend to think that. So our mind it does one thing all day long. It creates thoughts. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we forget that fact and we keep buying into the thoughts. And so a thought will kind of float across our mind. And we'll grab it and hold on to it and nurture it and nurse it and build it up. And so the question is kind of whether it's a right thought or a wrong thought. It's whether it's a helpful thought or a not so helpful thought. And the other piece of our mind, if it's creating thoughts, the other thing that it has to also be able to do is let go of thoughts. Mm-hmm. And we humans tend to like to grab hold. We over-identify with our thoughts. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I'll have a great idea, it'll come to my head. I'll go, wow, that's a great idea. And I'll play with that. And eventually at some point go, that's a stupid idea. And I've got to let it go, and sometimes we do the same thing with emotional content. Like, that person is talking about me and we start nurturing that along and build it up until that's got us stuck. And so the question is whether we can recognize that it's just our mind doing that thinking thing, or whether we over-identify and make it as I'm that. I've created that thought and that must be true because I thought it.
Yeah, but first it's the thought, then it's the feeling, and then it's the action. And I
exactly
always say,
right.
Nip it at the thought. Because again, those people, that example that you gave us of you being on the paddleboard on that day where the river, you're going against the river and all that time, the reality was that they probably didn't even notice you.
Yeah.
But we start festering, those thoughts start festering, and then it completely changes our outcome because of the thought. If we were to say, those people are there, but I'm so focused on going against the river so that I can come back with the flow. You go against the river or against the current when you're strong. Mm-hmm. And so you were doing the right thing.
Yeah.
But that wasn't enough. So that, we first to think, the thought, the feeling follows it. And so we need to guard ourselves. And so I love the chapter on responsibility and forgiveness. Whoa, that's another one that we hold on to things. The book is called The Immutable Laws of Living, the Inspirational Blueprint to Living Your Meaningful Life. And here we go. That's 407-373-5959. Seventh caller or texter, 407-373-5959 to start that journey into changing. Dr. Baucom, I really have enjoyed our conversation, and I want you to hold on and maybe we can continue after.
Yes.
But now we have Dale Billis of Liberty Health Share. Welcome back. Dale,
it's such a pleasure to be with you, Lillian. Thank you for the invitation.
And I am so grateful. So for those of you who have heard Dale Billis before on the show, he is the executive director of Liberty Health Share. Liberty Health Share is what I decided to embrace after I learned a new truth when it came to taking my life back, my health back, responsibility, talk about responsibility, and doing the right thing. And so today, Dale comes on the show to share what's new in the world of healthcare. And so today, what do you have for us? What do you have for us up your sleeve today, Dale?
I was reminded as to the need for us as individual consumers to take responsibility and control of our healthcare. I saw an article recently.
Yes.
I live in the state of Ohio. The state of Ohio had applied for what's referred to under the ACA as a 1332 waiver, asking basically permission from Health and Human Services to drop out of the mandates of the Affordable Health Care Act and instead shape and mold a healthcare option within the state, separate from the federal mandates. That waiver is permitted under the ACA, but it has to be granted permission from Health and Human Services. It remains to be seen whether or not that occurs. But it reminded me, frankly, of two things, Lillian.
Yeah.
One is the top-down, centralized federal effort to provide health care for all has become, over time, a true failure. And number two, even though individual states have that option, it still perpetuates a false conception that you and I are dependent upon a government entity to provide us with answers about the care of our health. Liberty Health Share simply gives the opportunity, option, and platform for individuals to make their own choices regarding their health care, share those costs in a like-minded community, but be the ones who are in charge and in control of the care of our most precious asset. That's our bodies.
Yes.
And so it's frankly fascinating to me that even still there's efforts federally and on a state level to make those decisions for us instead of we ourselves.
And by the way, Liberty Health Share, if you want to learn more, you could go to libertyhealthshare.org. That's 855-58-LIBERTY. This is what I believe in and I embrace completely. And I just love it that Liberty Health Share is a proud sponsor of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. And we're going to continue our conversation with Dale and later on with Dr. Lee Baucom when we return worldwide at whenyounneedafriend.com. We'll be right here waiting for you. I read your article that you're talking about, Dale, and one of the questions I had was the fine that people were given if they didn't have insurance.
Right.
And so the people that have this Affordable Care Act, the people that that had to use this, there were people that were fined if they made more money. Let's say, for example, my husband and I were fined $7,000 and we had to pay back $7,000, even though we stopped using this Affordable Care Act. We were fined $7,000 because we used it at one point.
Right.
Well,
it's income based. We can chat about that, but
well, while we're off the air, I wanted to see if there's any recourse, because if they're saying in Ohio that you guys are going to be exempt, how can we, for people that were charged for using it for a short period of time, even though they needed it at the time, if you left it and went to something else and your income increased, you were still penalized.
You're still penalized, correct. And it is a part it's a part of the fine print that few people understand, that particularly if you're receiving a subsidy for a Obamacare exchange plan, it is income based. And so you must pay that all back if you exceed a particular threshold.
Even after you leave it.
Even after you depart the plan.
That was something that was never shared. And so people now at this point, what I'd like for you to address is, as we come back, is what does it mean with Ohio leading the way with this and what would it be? Ohio would be exempt. And then once Ohio says, yeah, we're not going to accept this anymore, all the other states will follow?
That's the attempt, is that we just break up into 50 different jurisdictions having to do with our health care, number one. But number two, their particular appeal is their right to eliminate the individual mandate. Few people understand that the individual mandate still exists. They've just simply dialed the penalty down to zero. But what Congress gives, it can certainly take away. And they can reinstitute that penalty anytime in the future.
Interesting, interesting. And for those of you who are watching this, Liberty Health Share is what I've chosen now. I do not have any insurance anymore. I have Health Share, which promotes and embraces my healthy lifestyle. And I'd love for you to share a little bit more, Dale, because we're going to be coming back on the air pretty soon. But I'd love for us to talk about how wonderful Liberty Health Share is too.
A friend, you can count on me. I'll be right here waiting for you.
This is the serious
You
side.
can text Lillian McDermott or leave her a voicemail.
I mean, this is serious stuff that we don't even think about.
5959. Once again, here's Lillian.
Welcome back to the Lillian McDermott Radio Show, where we always learn and grow with one another. Today's teacher, we've just finished talking to Dr. Lee Baucom. We're going to be bringing him back later on when we get off the air as well. But the Immutable Laws of Living, I want to remind you, the seventh caller or texter, 407-373-5959. And also, we have one of my favorite sponsors ever, Dale Billis, the Executive Director of Liberty Health Share. For those of you who want to learn more about Liberty Health Share, check out any of my shows where Dale Billis is on, and check out, I would love to do just one show, Dale, where it's just about Liberty Health Share, because there's so much that we don't know about Health Share. And what's so different about Liberty Health Share is that you also embrace a natural, holistic way of living, right?
We do indeed. In fact, we, Lillian, are a nationwide nonprofit association of health conscious men, women, and families who join together to pay each other's medical bills. Yes. We do that without the aid of an insurance company or the government, just a regular systematic way of meeting healthcare costs in that like-minded community of faith and values. And you were speaking earlier about personal responsibility. Yeah. That's one of our key values, is that we take responsibility for the care of our health. It's our money at stake. And so the decisions we make regarding accessing health care, we're very conscious of costs, the treatment plans, the unnecessary care that frequently occurs in the system, because it's our money at stake and the money of our fellow members, so that when we're sharing those bills, it brings about a consciousness not only of ourselves, but also of others.
Very good. And Dale, you were talking about this article that was published in Ohio, that they are pretty much saying, even though you're required to have insurance, the penalty now is going to be zero. This is what the mandate, this is what we're looking at. But here's the thing. For me, I have an Affordable Care Act exempt proposition here. I have Liberty Health Share, which allows me to comply with that regulation without being penalized. Can you share a little bit more about how we can circumvent that? If like in Florida, do we still have to have insurance, and do we still get penalized? Is this something different for Ohio than in Florida?
No, it is a nationwide mandate, and few people understand. With the passage of the new tax plan, they have dialed down the penalty for not having insurance to zero, but that begins in 2019.
Yeah.
So here we are filing our taxes for 2017. That mandate still applies and the penalty applies. Whenever we go to file our taxes for 2018, that mandate and penalty still applies in 2018. It doesn't begin until 2019, and the mandate still exists. So they may reinstate the penalty at any time thereafter. Wow. Thankfully, you and I and all 230,000 individuals with Liberty Health Share have engaged in our own individual healthcare reform. Under the Affordable Care Act, healthcare sharing is exempt from the requirement to have insurance, and we're also exempt from the penalty.
So let's talk about this exemption, because the benefits of going with Health Share, because I had shared before that when I had the regular insurance that was mandated by the government or that my company provided or whatever, I was paying high costs to have insurance, and then there was a a deductible that was even higher. And so it seemed like, because I prefer to go to natural, holistic, integrative, alternative doctors, which to me is the way to go, my insurance wasn't paying for that. So let's talk about how Liberty Health Share honors the individual that wants to do this with, by the way, if you're thinking Liberty Health Share is like a fly-by-night thing, $1 million per incident they share with you. So this is not a flimsy kind of health care option. This is the option for me. So share a little bit about the cost, Dale, and how Liberty Health Share is able to do this and accommodate up 230,000 people.
Yes, the number one attraction that catches people's attention, Lillian, is the differential of cost.
Yeah.
But between traditional healthcare that we've dropped out of and abandoned, and the health share arrangement, and the costs are incredibly much lower. $199 for a single,
yeah.
$299 for a couple, $449 for a family. Those dollars go into a secure online account that's then matched to another person that month that's having medical expenses. Mm-hmm. And that's what, in most cases, frankly, seals the deal.
Yes.
The cost differential catches attention, but when folks realize with Liberty Health Share their money is going to another person, mm-hmm. not to a company black hole somewhere, it gives a sense of fulfillment and gratification that their dollars are helping another living, breathing human being each month. That's number two. And number three, we make the decisions among ourselves. You've referred to our acceptance of holistic and alternative methods of treatment. Our members made that choice and decision that we would be inclusive of our individual choices of healthcare to pursue those alternative treatments. And we make those kinds of decisions every year together. So we're member driven, member decided, member engaged. And that's a huge difference in the care of our health.
I just want to, for those of you who are just tuning in, we're talking about Liberty Health Share. For those of you who want to learn more about Liberty Health Share with Dale Billis as the executive director, I just love it when he comes on, because this is the only way we can share what's really happening out there. This is the only way that we can take our health back. For those of you who are health conscious, for those of you who want to be healthy and make the choices you want at low cost, libertyhealthshare.org. That's libertyhealthshare.org. And the number is 855-585-4237. Dale, when I made this change and when I made this switch, I must acknowledge that I was a little fearful at first, because when we abandon what we're so comfortable with, when we abandon the things that everybody's telling you this is the only way, and Liberty Health Share has come out, or the health share industry as well, has come out with this wonderful way to saying, no, you don't have to look at it this way. The earth isn't flat. The earth is a sphere. And there's still people who think the earth is flat. So let's talk about real quick why people should change, and why is it safe to dip your toe in the Liberty Health Share?
Well, we employ a methodology for meeting healthcare costs that is centuries old. That's community support and care for one another. Mm-hmm. That's been around for generations. In fact, it was the way in which healthcare costs were met prior to the advent of modern insurance.
Yes.
Somebody had an expense, they'd go to their local church, their local community center, folks would gather around, support them emotionally or spiritually or financially, and meet those costs and expenses. We've simply employed that principle into the solution for healthcare. So on the basis of mutual aid, mutual assistance, the goodwill of our fellow members, neighbor to neighbor, we pay each other's costs. And that's a successful formula, and it wins out every time.
That's right. 855-58-LIBERTY. And Dale, we'll go over those costs again. For individual,
$199.
For a couple,
$299.
And for a family of 3 or more,
$449, and that's per month, that is shared with another member.
It's amazing. It's amazing. And I'm so glad I made the shift 2 years ago. And I'm so proud that Liberty Health Share is now a proud sponsor of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. Thank you so much, Dale, for always being so supportive of the show and what we stand for as well.
Thank you. It's a great honor to be with you. God bless.
Yes. And so I want to shift back for those of you who want to learn a little bit about a new truth about a health share program. That's 855-58-LIBERTY, or that's 855-585-4237, or go to libertyhealthshare.org, learn about it. And so thank you so much, Dale. And Dr. Lee Baucom, we're going to continue our conversation a little bit more about these laws after we get off the air. And I want to encourage all of you to go to whenyounneedafriend.com to go to the YouTube video and to also check out my proud sponsors of the Lillian McDermott Radio Show. Thank you, Dr. Baucom. Thank you, Dale Bellis. Please remember, this is Lillian McDermott wishing you love, peace, joy, and unexpected abundance. Make it the best day ever. I love it. 2 men saying ever with me. Very good. Thank you so much, Dale. I love that article. But, as I was reading the article, I'm thinking, I already exercise my freedom.
There you
I
go.
am a member of Liberty Health Share. So whether they do, it is so much. I wish I would have known about Liberty Health Share during the time where I needed Affordable Care Act.
Right.
And when we didn't need it anymore, it still followed us.
Yeah, that's the sad reality of that, the impact of those regulations. But as I said earlier, thankfully, we've engaged in our own individual healthcare reform, and gratefully we can do that.
And you have done a great job, Dale. It's always a pleasure to have you on the show. I know that I'm not the only interview you have today. You are a powerhouse, and I'm so grateful to Liberty Health Share. Thank you again for being on the show.
God bless.
Okay. And so we're going to shift back for those of you who are watching today. And I am, thank you, Brian. Oh, Brian's already gone. Okay, so now we have just you and I and all our viewers at this point. As I was looking at your book last night, I'm like, wow, we speak the same language. We've learned this new truth, but yet there are still people. I mean, I've interviewed Bruce Lipton. I don't know if you follow Bruce Lipton. I've interviewed so many mind and health and spirit people that have said, we do this to ourselves. And we don't even know we're doing it. It's the subconscious. What I talk about on the show is reframing, and you do too. Mm-hmm. Here's 2 people that have never met each other, and we're speaking the same language. How did you rewrite the program in your thoughts?
I guess slowly over time. I told you I was stubborn earlier, and I mean that. I think my wife would tell you that I'm a very stubborn person, and there are strengths to that and weaknesses. The stubborn part is not changing easily. The other piece is that when you start changing, you refuse to not change. You refuse to not, to be derailed. And so as one of the things that I realized is that I needed to question a lot of what had come my way. I was trained as a therapist. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that was very clear to me is therapy as a world is stuck in a kind of a what happened to you, how are you broken place.
Let's relive it over and over again.
Repeatedly every week.
So depressed that you need me every week.
Right. And that is, so one of the things that I kept saying, which was a problem when I was in training, was my job was to put myself out of business. Not that I expected that to happen.
Listen, I understand. I'm a life coach as well. You don't want us. We don't want to be needed because we need our freedom.
Yeah, well, and the other person does too. And so I remember in my own experience, so part of my training required me to do therapy. And there came a point when I said to my supervisory staff, I'm not doing this anymore. And they said, well, you can talk that over with your therapist. And I walked into my therapist's office. I said, nothing against you. You've been a great person, but I'm not doing this anymore because there are other ways of moving through life, other ways of healing, other ways of processing it. And I've processed enough of the bad stories. So he agreed with me and wrote my letter and got me out of it with my committee. But I recognized how strongly that was rooted in. The way through something was to replay it. And for me, the way through was to understand it differently, not to just replay it the same time every time.
I love it.
So that was a piece for me of understanding that I somehow needed to have. And so you talked about the forgiveness piece.
Yes.
My next book is actually about my forgive process. In fact, titled The Forgive Process, about how we do that.
That's a much easier title than The Immutable Laws of Living, I must say. That'll be a much easier interview.
We debated the title for a while. So what do you take out of there, though? But, it's all the pieces. So part of my thing was to realize that a big piece of forgiving is to understand things differently. Not that they didn't happen, but how we read them for ourselves, how we understand ourselves in that, what lessons there are for us to learn, not that we created it or happened to us for that, but that there are always lessons to be learned through everything in life.
Of course. And
other people have a place to be understood differently. And we call that empathy, to understand where they're coming from, that people who are hurt other people have been hurt, and that they're acting from their hurt. And so to understand that doesn't mean we have to stay close to them, but it does give us a different understanding of the events around that. And so I think that's always true, that when we have these stories we tell ourselves about our past, we have to understand that that's one perspective. We pretend like there's this camera that has captured everything and we're remembering it exactly as it happened. But we're actually remembering it through our own screens of perception. We're also remembering only our portion of it. And we are only remembering, so back to the thoughts, a thought's a thought. A memory is simply a thought that we've acted as if it's a true recollection of the past, and then it's simply another thought. And it changes over time. We just don't notice it. So that's one of the places that we begin to understand that if we're going and reliving that thought repeatedly, which people do without a therapist too, but they relive that thought over and over, they become more and more convinced that that is truth, not thought. And that's where we get stuck.
It's interesting because I've been writing about this. I also write for Florida Today because of what the conversation that I had with, I was telling you of that workshop that I had gone to. I decided not to write my book.
We got to change that.
Thank you, my therapist. So if anybody wants to know who my therapist is, it's Dr. Baucom. So I was implanted a thought, a truth by someone else that said, because I don't have 50,000 to 100,000 followers, that I should not waste my time to write a book. But yet Dr. Baucom has a totally different opinion, which I believe could put me back on my yellow brick road to write a book. And is that the book is a path to helping and healing others, which is what I want. I don't need to have a New York Times bestselling book, although it would be great to have a New York Times bestselling book. And I want to do it in a real way because there's a lot of people out there that are doing that in a forceful way. I want to be able to help and heal. And so one of the things that I've been writing about lately is that that path that we take, because it's what we think we need to do. These thoughts that are in our life that are prompted by maybe an experience we had in our childhood. Maybe it's something that we perceived as ridiculed, or maybe it's something but it was implanted in us, that feeling, and everything that we do manifests, right? Everything that we're trying to fear becomes part of what drives us towards fear. And we are doing this to ourselves. So in rewriting the program and rewriting this program that you're talking about, it is so important that we dive into our past. Now there's a book, and a book of thought. When I say book of thought, there's some evidence that says that we need to go back to that childhood or that experience. And some people say, rewrite it. Rewrite the experience. Other people say, disassociate yourself from that experience and don't ever bring it up again. But how do you suggest, whether it's like someone planting a seed in my brain saying you could never write a book because you don't have 50,000 followers, at this time, but how do you suggest when people come to you and say, help me release this pain, help me release this thought? How do you do that? How do you help somebody help themselves?
Great question. A pretty big question. So a piece of that, I do think that it's important for us to not be pretending bad things didn't happen. So,
So
when I say
no to the disassociation.
right, no, because they still are there. And so my therapy background recognizes that what happens to us does impact us.
Sure.
The next place of where I am now, I get to decide how it impacts me and how deeply it impacts me and what that does. And one of the things that I'm very clear about is that when we are focused on those old things, we're so self-focused that we've turned it inward. We're constantly kind of looking, how am I being perceived, like on the river, rather than what am I doing in the world?
I love that story, by the way.
What am I doing in the world? What am I bringing to the world? And so one is a very, it pulls energy inward. And whenever we pull energy inward, we get stuck, as opposed to how can I put energy out? So I talked about impact a little while ago. There is no way we can avoid impact. I mean, so the scientists are calling this the Anthropocene time period, because the Anthropocene humans are impacting the world. Mm-hmm. And so that in a broad context, they talk about it. I think about that in our individual life. There is no way that I can't, through my life, avoid having an impact on other people, on the world around me. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, am I having a positive impact or negative impact? One of the things that's very clear in the news and everywhere around us is that when we are self-focused, we're going to create a negative impact, because it's going to be, what about me? What am I getting? What does this mean about me? Versus me saying, how can I make a positive impact? Mm-hmm. So when I was getting healthy, one of the things I started to do was to do some running and some biking. And I didn't mean to. I was just kind of chatting about it. And I counted out the other day, and I can count 30 people that were directly impacted in making a positive difference, just because they were saying, hey, you're getting healthier. What are you doing? Oh, I'm running. And so now in our church, we have 5 people who have done marathons that weren't running before I talked about it. I have several friends who are now biking seriously, because I thought, and I'm not even biking anymore, but it hooked into something that they had wanted to do, and it freed them up. Mm-hmm. And I can talk about the people who changed their eating habits. They'll say, wow, you're in a lot better shape. What are you doing? Oh, well, here's what I'm doing. And that's a positive rollout. Mm-hmm. So back to your book. When I write a book, I'm sitting there thinking I'm having a conversation with one person. And if one person picks up my book and says, wow, that made a difference, I feel like I've done my job in that piece. And so all I'm trying to do in the pieces I'm trying to reach out is to say, there's a different way of living your life. Mm-hmm. If it works for you, great. If somebody else, that's great. But find something that keeps you moving forward. Find something that helps you say, this is why I'm here. This is my purpose. Most of the time when I meet people who are stuck, they have no sense of why they're here. They have no sense of purpose in the world, and they can't. And if you don't have a sense of purpose, you can't have a good, deep meaning that this is meaningful. If we're kind of chugging through the day and going, I'm just doing it for the paycheck, or I'm just doing it because I have to, there's no meaning in that. But if you're saying, I'm making a positive difference for people, I feel like I'm living out of my gifts and my talents, then that's a very meaningful experience. That's why I put those 3 together. I call them the triad of meaning, purpose, and impact, MPI. Yeah. Yeah. If they're all fitting together, there's no way to be stuck. If you feel like you're living your purpose, you can't be stuck. You may be doing the same thing over and over again, but it's not from a place of being stuck. It's because you're digging the trench deeper and deeper, trying to get to that bigger place.
Yeah. I think as you were talking, I was writing something. So if you see me writing, it's because I want to remember.
Taking notes.
I want to remember the question that's come out of what you're saying. We talked about prior to that white blood cell, these white blood cells that get implanted into your body and your mind want to be in alignment. Mm-hmm. And when they're out of alignment, the body knows you have to deal with something. The body knows you've got to deal with pain. The mind says, I want to avoid pain. I'm fearful of pain. I don't want to associate myself with the pain. The body says, you don't? I'm going to give you pain. I'm going to align myself. You need to deal with pain. So this is the pain the body's going to send you. Mm-hmm. And so in going back, how important it is to go back to our childhood or wherever we perceive that injury that has occurred to us. But I think the most important aspect of going back there is going there without emotion, without that ego saying I was hurt or they did this to me, and without emotion. So I have the 4 responsibility questions on my website. I don't know if you've checked them out. How important is it, as you're doing the work and you're helping people heal, that when we revisit this emotion, like when you tell the story of you paddleboarding, you tell the story without the you could tell the story, oh man, what a buffoon, here I am, thinking I'm doing so good and I'm pressing all these people, but I look back and I've only moved like 10 inches or so, and then here comes the negative self-talk, here's the negative self. But when you recall the message, do you recall the message to learn from it, or do you recall the message with emotion going, man, what a fool, and continue that cycle, that vicious cycle, like being in a hamster wheel of continuing to badger yourself with the emotion?
Yeah, so we're all going to be self-reflective and self-referencing. There's no way to get rid of that. It's because I'm living in my own head somehow. So the question is, yes, we do both. And the question is how we get away from that. So One of the things that I've realized is that we have a built-in barometer that tells us how our thinking is going. Mm-hmm. And that's our emotional state. So I'm not saying that there are bad emotions or good emotions, but generally when I talk to people, most people want to feel joy, feel satisfaction, feel higher emotion. So I'm saying there's a zero line, the zero meaning I'm just kind of flat, right?
Okay.
Then there's the higher, I'm feeling good today, I'm excited, I'm joyful, I'm content. Then there's the I'm angry, I'm resentful, I'm jealous.
That's below the line.
That's the below the line. So the lower emotions and the higher emotions. So we go to the beach, same beach place every year. And on the wall in the hall is a barometer. And the barometer, so as soon as I get there, the first thing I do is I go over and I put the needle on where the barometer is reading. And so there's a needle you can move, and then there's the one showing the pressure. I match them up. Mm-hmm. So once I've matched them up, I've calibrated for where the pressure is right then. Mm. If I walk back and I look and I see that the pressure is dropping, it's lower, I'll go, okay, we probably need to go to the mall because bad weather's coming. Mm-hmm. If it's the same or higher, I go, okay, it's probably a good beach day. And so the barometer is telling me what's going on around me, the pressure around me. Our barometer is our emotions. If I'm feeling good, I don't need to really worry about my thinking. I can still be moving towards my purpose and all those things. Mm-hmm. But if it's up above zero, if it's moving above there or right where it's been, great. But if it drops lower, if I'm feeling anger, resentment, frustration, then I need to ask the question, what am I thinking that makes me feel that way? Mm-hmm. And so now I've gone from feeling back to the thought. Mm-hmm. And if I can look at that thought and go, okay, that's a thought. Mm-hmm. It doesn't necessarily mean that the thought is a lie, but I'm thinking it and I'm getting stuck on the thought.
It's not supporting us.
It's not supporting us. And so can I let it go? Mm-hmm. So I've had the conversation with people saying, you can't just let a thought go. To which I'll say, what were you thinking yesterday at 3:00 in the afternoon? Because I bet you let that go. And so if you can let a thought go, you can let thoughts go. You can let any thought go by saying, I always imagine, and when I've got that thought, I go, okay, what am I thinking about? Okay, that's what's got me upset. That's a thought. And once I do that, it goes from the reality of thinking, pretending that's real, to that's a thought. And once I see that, I can kind of imagine that's just a leaf, dropping through my thoughts. There's another thought coming, so I can just let that go and watch it go away. So there are still things that sometimes have to be dealt with. So one of the dangers of this is somebody saying, Okay, so you're telling me that if I have a thought about something that happened in the past, then I need to just let that go and not doing anything about it.
Mm.
And that's not it. Sometimes we do have, say there's somebody in your life that's dangerous. That's not a thought to just let go and do nothing about. The problem is that we often think, and never act.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you say, you know what, I've got this thought that person is not a safe person in my life, I can either keep thinking that for the next 5 years, at which point I'm still every time getting more and more used to that danger point, or I can say I've got to take action and deal with that so that it's not just a thought that is roaming in my head. I'm actually doing something to move me forward.
Mm. You know, you talk about that, that leaf that falls, there's the tree of life, and this is our life, and we allow those leaves to fall.
Mm-hmm.
And as we do that, there's the people that have the thought that you're talking about. But taking that next step, courage, again, the word courage, that 20 seconds of step, when you are coaching someone along the way that is feeling that sadness of what maybe the loss of expectation because that individual maybe hurt them, or that individual keeps hurting them. The decision that you make that this person isn't right for my life, there's a dissociation, that there's something that happens in your body that feels like now they're taking a limb off my tree. Mm. It's not just the leaf, and it's the belief that because maybe they're family, or because maybe they've been in their life for a long time, that we are to take the good, the bad, and the ugly with that individual. When we say, enough, this person is not good for us, at what point do you draw that line in the sand? And when you draw the line in the sand to decide you're going to move forward without that individual, internally, there's a belief that says, that person should be with me forever. How do you take that belief and say, I'm doing this for myself. I'm doing this to help myself because it's too painful? How do you disassociate those two? I don't know if I'm asking the right question, but I see this over and over and over again, that even though I'm going to take the action to walk away from the individual, the belief is, now I'm missing a limb.
Hmm. Yeah. And that is the belief. You're right. And it's belief, not reality. You're missing a relationship.
That's right.
Damaging. And so one of the things I talk about is boundaries in the book. We have to have boundaries. So we all grew up as kids without boundaries. And that's an adult task to figure out what our boundaries are and how to set them. Mm-hmm. So this is not a time to say, bad me, when I was 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, I didn't set boundaries. Well, welcome to being a child. And that's why we have adults in our life that hopefully protect us. Correct. But that's not to be blamed. That's just a reality. And to say, I can always now set my boundaries. I didn't have them then, but I can sure choose them now. And when we start creating boundaries are basically ways of saying, no, you may not treat me that way. Mm-hmm. If somebody repeatedly violates boundaries, the final boundary is, and you're not in my life. And part of mastering boundaries is making sure that we're setting boundaries so that people have a chance of living into how we expect to be treated. And then they're self-eliminating. If they won't treat us the way we keep asking and demanding that we be treated, then they've decided by that, not to be a part of our life. Good. And to allow that to be that piece, not me excluding. You've excluded by the fact that you won't treat me the way I need to be treated. Mm-hmm. But that also means that you've set the boundaries along the way. So there's a possibility of them saying, you're right, I need to treat you like that.
Mm. There is a possibility, but the expectation may not meet that possibility. And so that's when we get to look at ourselves as the important factor of, okay, what am I doing that is making a difference? What am I doing that is, because there is the thought of the person who's like, why me? Why not me? There's that, why me? And then there's the other one was like, why not me? Why not me? Why not I experience that and the difference is what? What is the difference between someone that feels why me and why not me?
So that focus that we've talked about, am I looking at how this is just me? Because everybody, I work with lots of couples, and so they're like, I don't know why we have problems. And my response is, every couple, 100% of couples have problems. It's not you. How you solve them might be different. Correct. And so there might be tools that you need to bring in, but everybody is going to have struggle in their life. Everybody are going to have people who don't treat them the way they should be treated. Everybody's going to have loss. Everybody's going to have pain. That's promise you, there's no escaping that. We're not going to get out of this alive. The question is, how are we going to move through those pieces? Are we going to say, oh, this is so unfair, and so let's just get rid of that and say, you're right, life's not fair? Here's the thing that I recognize. If people, so I've had some opportunities of being other places in the world, India and some other places that have a different level of life. And so when people say, it's not fair, I sit there and go for myself, you're right, it's not fair. I've already won. I mean, I'm kind of at the top end, and anybody who can listen to, watch on the internet a show or listen to something, we're in the winning side of this. Yeah. And so we don't have to worry about it's not fair. We already recognize that. So now we're trying to figure out on how to deal with the tough stuff that comes our way so that we're able to use our gifts and our capacities to help kind of move the world forward a little bit. The world certainly needs that these days. Tune in a little bit to the news and you go, wow, we're in trouble. Unless each of us say, okay, I'm responsible for making my little difference. And maybe even a big difference, but I'm responsible for making the difference and moving things forward so that I'm reaching out in the world and saying, I'm not worried about what's fair. I'm worried about how I can be of service and of meaning in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, your book surely does that. The Immutable Laws of Living, the Inspirational Blueprint to Living Your Meaningful Life. There it is. There's that beautiful book. And also I want to encourage you to go to theimmutablelawsofliving.com. If you want to learn more about the book, you can also go to whenyounneedafriend.com and click on that. It's right there. Where else can they buy the book other than Amazon?
Local bookstores, wherever you like to buy books, it should be there. If it's not, they can certainly find it and order it for you.
Yes. And so again, it's ready there for you at whenyounneedafriend.com. Just go there, click on Lily's Kitchen, all the books that we're starting our library. I think we need to change it to Lily's Library and then Lily's Kitchen. But anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Baucom, for sharing your wisdom on the Lillian McDermott radio show, because it is so important that we realize we're not alone. We're all dealing with the same old things. And, and for those people who think that life coaches, psychologists, psychiatrists, doctors, lawyers, every single one of us has issues that we deal with constantly. What makes you a better therapist, Dr. Baucom, is the fact that you are living what you are preaching.
Thank you.
It's not just, this is what the books tell us. We already know. And, I never thought I'd be such a rebel. I never thought. When I started the show, it was about being compliant. It was about being compliant, being able to have conversations without being made to feel wrong. So the thought was, hey, take that pill if it makes you feel better. Eat that steak or that yoo-hoo, wahoo, whatever, ding dong, whatever. Eat it if it makes you feel good. And it turns out that as I've been challenged on the show, and I've learned, interviewed teachers like you and others, and gone through my own personal growth, because in the direction I was going, I think I would be dead by now. Not because I was a drug user but the thoughts of inadequacy, the thoughts of, I don't know if I've shared this before, and for those of you who I've heard this, you've heard it before, but there were two key things that happened in my life that planted that thought. One of them was my second grade teacher told me I would never amount to much, and then my paternal grandmother told me that if I stopped playing the piano, she wouldn't love me anymore. I stopped playing the piano. So I took this unlovable, good for nothing person in everything. And I was very successful, but not in my mind. In my mind, I was an unlovable, good for nothing, person. And that's not something that, I knew consciously. It's something that just organically happened. And once I started looking at that hole in my soul and started dealing with it, I was able to look at the success. Would you like to add anything to that?
I had a similar story. When I was in kindergarten, my teacher told my mother that she probably shouldn't expect that I would amount to much. Yeah, she had other terms to use for that.
I don't mean to laugh at you, but aren't teachers such great teachers?
Well, and what she wasn't picking up on was I had a learning disability. And in fact, they didn't pick up on it until I was in 4th grade.
Wow.
And so I had escaped learning to read. And so I did a lot of hiding. So here I am, dyslexic, writing books.
There you go.
And here I had a teacher who told me, oh, you won't amount to much. So what do? I push on to get a PhD. And so part of what you realize is that some of those messages back there can either push us down and keep us stuck, or give us kind of the jet fuel to say, well, let me show you differently.
Let me show you. Let me show you. And either way, that little voice in your head of that child needs to be cared for. And I remember that story even before I went back and started, digging deep, and I call it my soul shovel. And taking my soul shovel out and saying, what is it about that moment that affected me? They say sticks and stones can break my bones, but names will never hurt me. That's bunk. Names hurt just as much. If name calling, if people who have been name called would leave a bruise or blood or anything like that, name calling would be called abuse. It's not. It's it's like, it's just the way it is, get away, get over it, you little punk, and, just little words like that. And gratitude, being grateful. I've looked at my past and my childhood and all of that with a very grateful heart. And again, we're all teachers and we're all students, and we can learn how to be or how not to be. It's our choice, right?
Yeah.
And I love how you've got the laws all set out for us to go to these laws and use them to our benefit as opposed to against us, like the river. I love your story. Because I've been there so many times. And, one of the things that I learned when I was going through my own personal growth was it's none of my business what people think of me.
Right.
I do it anyway. I do it anyway. And then just be proud of what you've accomplished, because, when you've been told that not to expect much out of you, it's amazing how just that right there, you used it to fuel you. Let me show her. But at the same time, as you were achieving all these things, did you feel they were as big as what other people thought?
I tend to downplay anything. I'll do something and they'll go, oh, so proud of you. And I'm like, yeah, well, we'll see.
Yeah, so, because that voice, you have to prove that person, right? Because we want to we want to please those people,
and
right?
There's always something else.
There's
always something bigger.
That's right. Well, I'm telling you, I'm very glad that we met, and I'm looking forward to the next conversation. So thank you, Dr. Baucom. Again, the book is called Immutable Laws of Living, the Inspirational Blueprint to Living the Meaningful Life. There you go. And to you, my viewers, thank you so much. I look forward to our next conversation.